Hello, guys, and welcome. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. Our guest today is one of the most important people to me in my life. His name is Shaman Wade. Wade owns Calgary Shamanic Services. He's obviously a trained shamanic practitioner. He's trained through the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. He's a part of their guest faculty. Wade has a master's degree in environmental science. He has a degree in psychology. He's been educated in philosophy. And if that wasn't enough, he owns a farm in northern Alberta that he raises buffalo organically. He does a whole bunch of organic work. He's very intelligent. He's got a bunch of irons in the fire, but he understands the spiritual side of life, and he also understands how to live like a regular person. And again, he's been super important to me in my walk. He works with my wife shamanically. He works with myself shamanically. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with Wade. This is the first installment of an ongoing conversation with him. We're going to do quite a few of these because there's a lot of layers to pull back about who he is and what he can do. But without further ado, here's the first portion of my conversation with Shaman Wade. Enjoy. We as seekers are all searching for that divine experience with our God. Listen in as we discuss different people's stories and perspectives about God from their walk of life and from their part of the world. My name is Matt Muldoon, and this is the Obsessed with God podcast. So we're live, Wade. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm doing awesome. Have you been looking forward to this?
Yeah, looking forward to it for certain. It's kind of exciting to kind of reach out and get the word out and just kind of shoot the old SHIT, I guess.
That's right. We're so for everyone listening, my name is Matt. This is Wade. Everyone's more familiar with Wade than they will be with me. Wade and I are going to have some conversations about shamanism and spirituality and consciousness and all of the things that sort of envelop that in the near future. We have a bunch of things we'd like to discuss, and yeah, so I'm super interested in it. My life revolves around it, and Wade is ruthlessly immersed in it, for lack of a better term. But we'll get right into it. So this is Wade. Wade. Maybe introduce yourself a little bit, who you are, where you came from, why we're talking.
Sure. Yeah. So Wade, I've been doing this work for quite a long time. This path, wasn't something I ever expected to get involved with. Didn't grow up spiritual, didn't go to a church, but had a very many spiritual experiences throughout my life, just natural. Grew up in rural northern Alberta. Lived outdoors a lot, spending time in the bush, around the animals, on the land, and just, back in the 80s when it was growing up, there wasn't a lot to do in a small town, so you had to get out there and do things because boredom was kind of overtook you. And as a kid, it's a real challenge, the boredom that you face. But looking back at it now, it was a real gift because it forced you to experience the life around you, to look at the beauty, to embrace it, and to really open you up to spiritual experience. And I think inherently we're all spiritual beings, and inherently we're all open to spiritual experience. And I was fortunate to have a lot of natural spiritual experiences throughout my life, and which eventually brought me to shamanism. So I do practice shamanism. I've been doing this since the early 2000s. Trained with a local shaman named Manfred Lucas many years ago. Went on to train with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. I'm a faculty member with them now, and I teach workshops, and I've been doing healing work for over 10 years now, seeing clients.
It's so interesting. You just said about growing up in the 80s and it allowed you to have these experiences. My wife and I were just driving with our two little boys the other day, and they've never been in a vehicle that doesn't have a DVD player, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't do anything without iPads, without DVD players, and these sorts of things. And so I grew up in the early and mid '90s, so the same as you, right? Like your mind was open to experiences. I feel like more than people's minds are now. Potentially, there was just sort of less distraction. But when do you think that you were obviously a spiritual person before you found shamanism? Do you think that your time sort of by yourself up north in the bush, like you say, around animals on a farm, things like this, do you think that afforded you the opportunity to have these experiences, or do you think they're experiences that you would have had anyway?
Yeah, that's a good question. You never know that answer, to be honest with you. So it's that old question: are we predisposed to this? Do we carry a certain karma? People talk about past life experiences. Are we conditioned to have these experiences based on our prior deeds, or are we just naturally open to them based on our surroundings? Is it nurture versus nature? I don't know. I definitely do attribute, even the long car rides. There's a 4-hour drive to Edmonton, so there's no DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky if we got the radio coming in, so you either had a book or you stared out the window, and that really what it allows you to do is engage in direct experience, and that's the whole basis and nature of spirituality is the ability to just be present and to experience what's happening to you now. There's a real movement in terms of spirituality. It's become a lot more popular, and we tend to be seekers of experience. We read books or we watch videos, and we want to have the experience that was highlighted in that book or that movie or that documentary. And we tend to chase those. And really, it's the chasing of them that gets in the way of the actual experience. And it's really about laying things down and really, really accepting who you are and working with where you're at and embracing the reality that's presented to you. And through direct experience. And this opens the doorways to the spiritual realms, to spirituality, into spiritual transformation. It's not something that happens in the future. It always happens now. And how do you prepare yourself for that now moment? And it's really about letting things fall away and really putting your consciousness in the right place, if that makes any sense. And that's hard to know how to do. It does happen very spontaneous for people, especially the kids. Most kids, I think, have natural spiritual experiences. And it's just, as spirituality becomes more and more popular, we have to be aware of how do we set ourselves up for those experiences? How do we engage these processes in a healthy way where we're not seeking, and that's the real challenge.
Oh, is that the real challenge? You just hit the nail right on the head. I seek so hard, and I'm trying not to. Like I have these, I suppose like everyone, I suppose I feel like I'm special because they happen to me, but like I have these profound experiences, and then when they happen, I'm like, oh, there it is again. And I'm just like, I try and reel myself in from the there it is again, but like, oh my God, it's so hard. And it's funny what you said, I suppose I should say too, to everybody, Wade, the reason we're having these conversations is Wade is my shaman. I met Wade through what he does professionally. And it really, Wade's personality and his methodology and his experience and his everything just sort of really connected to me on a real personal level. So I'm very drawn to Wade and his work and his disposition because I'm sort of opposite of Wade and a little bit more intense. But do you, like, it's sort of hard to convey because people haven't heard you speak that much, Wade, but you have a very calm disposition with when you're speaking. Did you always have a calm disposition before you came to spirituality, or did you learn that and then you applied it into shamanism? You applied it into the spirit realms, the spirit realms and things of this nature.
Yeah, I think my natural disposition is quite calm, but at the same time, I suffer from performance anxiety as a teen. He did very well academically in school. Was very did well in athletics, but I really struggled with performance anxiety in terms of the pressures of when people are evaluating you, or too focused on the outcome rather than performing the task at hand, and wasn't able to often reach my potential. And, it cost me my dreams of being an NHL hockey player, these sorts of things. But it was a lesson that I learned, over time, how to manage. But in terms of, say, speaking, I grew up, like I said, rural northern Alberta. Like, I know kids now are taught to public speak. They're taught to do group projects. We didn't do any of that, really. Maybe group projects, but not public speaking. So, I mean, for me to get up and talk in front of people was always a real challenge, to be honest with you. Brought a lot of anxiety, and didn't look forward to it. I remember my first workshop I taught, I probably didn't sleep the whole night before. It's like, oh my God, there's 20 people showing up and they want to listen to me. Yeah, right. And for me, it's hard work, right? And I believe no one's born with all the skills and gifts. We have certain areas where we have strengths. We all have a lot of weaknesses, and it comes down to just hard work and dedication and devotion and practice. And we can achieve anything as humans. We truly can.
It's funny you say that you have performance anxiety, because I've only known you from you as a position of a shaman, and me as a position of the student or the person you're working with. And you don't show any of those. I know we work with lots of people to help them get past that, to pitch, to do these sorts of things. And it's funny because, like, you don't show any of those signs of that was ever inside of you. You command a room very well. You're not boisterous at all, but you're definitely not backing down from anything. So it's funny how, like you say, it's funny the things that hard work can get you past. It's funny what you can work through to become what you're on your way to becoming.
And it's also grounded in, this is a passion, right? So I do shamanic work, but I'm grounded in a deeper spiritual experience, and I'm really interested in human transformation and transformation of consciousness and spiritual experience. And what does it mean? Excuse me. And really, this is what, when you speak about something you're passionate about, it becomes very easy, to be honest with you. And because you want to help people, you want to share the knowledge you have, because the things that I had to go through and learn, that took me a long time to learn. Excuse me, people not have to struggle like I did, to just, here's the baton. And, and as we grow spiritually as a society and culture, it just makes the world a better place. We start to reach our potential individually and also on a societal level by doing this work, I truly believe.
Did it start with you? With shamanism, like spiritually? I feel like everyone I know that's on a real seeker spiritual path, they all have like this launching point, and mine was definitely not shamanism. I sort of came to it, and shamanism was the thing that horrified me when I heard it, because like you said earlier, you didn't go to church as a kid. I did. And shamanism was not a thing that was ever, like, you couldn't speak about it. And so when I came to shamanism, I was like, I had to walk into the water slowly, and I had to really understand that everyone there was appropriate and compassionate and decent, and wasn't any of those things that anybody that goes to church describes. But was that what you started with, or did your real spiritual journey start with something else?
Well, for me, it was having natural spiritual experiences. I guess fortunate, you could say, starting at a very young age, had many pretty powerful awakenings and understanding on a very deep level of, what is the inherent nature of existence, what is God truly as an experience. Fortunate to have these experiences. And when you have them, it's like a blessing in disguise, or it can be a curse, because we open ourselves up to these deep truths. And then, once you have that experience, you're back in your everyday normal life with this profound knowledge and wisdom of how things truly are. But yet the world isn't operating that way. So it's quite a painful experience often, but really what we're trying to do, though, is as you work through these experiences, is how do we manifest this knowledge that you've experienced into the world? Because it will make the world a better place ultimately when we resonate with the inherent nature of things. And so that's really about what I'm really trying to do and trying to work with.
Did Did your did your coming to shamanism, like, you obviously you professionally help people, like that's the beginning and the end of what you do. And I've said to you before, and I'll say it aloud right here, as much as it embarrasses me, but like I'm not drawn to helping people.
Mhm.
I'm drawn to the work because I feel like it like sharpens the edge of my life, and I just feel like I'm constantly sharpening the blade. But I'm not drawn to helping. And I don't mean that I'm interested in helping people, but not in the same way that you are. Were you always were you committed to helping people before you started these sorts of things, or did you learn spiritual practices and then realize like I have a real capacity to help people here. I should probably start doing this.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it was more about just trying to help the world. Not to say the world's a bad place, but just I think we haven't reached our potential by any means. And just when you realize that, you can do more, and it's a question of what do you devote your life towards. So I think it really was grounded in that, based on spiritual experiences and awakenings. Like, we're not living in accordance with the way things truly are, or the natural inherent way of things are. And just started with the motivation to make the world a better place. So I did a graduate degree in environmental science, primarily to try to help understand the root cause of environmental issues and problems, and ultimately you can't destroy or denigrate the place you live. It sustains us. We need to have a very healthy ecosystem. It doesn't mean we can't have a thriving economy, but it's a sustainability, right, in terms of both coming together. And then in terms of shamanism, I think for me, I wasn't drawn to it at all. It's interesting in terms of spirituality. I never had any real interest in it. But what happened was someone came up to me and said, "You're a shamanic healer." And I was working in the corporate world at that time, managing a really large environmental consulting firm. And, it wasn't resonating with me, to be honest with you. It wasn't really satisfying my deep callings. That always really made me wonder, like, what is this person out to lunch? Is there something to what they're saying? Because I don't have an affinity towards shamanism. It looked very primitive to me. I had been doing a lot of meditation practices at that time, studying a bit of Tibetan Buddhism too. But in terms of shamanism, it just didn't resonate with me. I have an honors degree in psychology, so I started to pick up academic books about shamanism and really read them. And I saw there's an underlying theme of health, underlying theme of healing, underlying theme of transformation. And what I really realized was, until we heal ourselves, we can't really help others. We can't really help heal the world until we take care of ourselves first. And essentially, I saw the value in that, and so I began on the shamanic path for those reasons, just to really get involved more on a grassroots level, to help others transform. Because if we can't heal our blocks, it doesn't matter how long you meditate for. If there's deep wounds and there's deep blocks within you, what, you're not going to overcome them through just meditation alone. You have to dig deep. You have to face the darkness. You have to face the scars and the wounds, and you have to do the healing work. And then once you've done that, you start to transform. You start to grow, and then you can start to reach your deep spirituality and your deep spiritual potential, I believe.
Do you think, when just started to go back, because this is a thing that I'm super hung up on because I grew up in church.
Yeah.
Do you think that because you didn't grow up going to church, a transition from spiritual practice to spiritual practice to spiritual practice, excuse me,
Yeah.
was organic to shamanism? The way that it would be easier for, say, someone like yourself who didn't go to church, where like I grew up, my whole family is like Irish Catholic. My mom was the superintendent of the Catholic school division. Like, it was, holy man, we were ride or die Catholic. So like, it was my walk into spirituality, like wading into all those waters, was like, I was so, well, you're aware of what the culture of church is to begin with. Like, they're not exactly open about other experiences.
Mhm.
But do you think because that was void in your life, it was easier for you to sort of find your way organically and sort of develop the skills you have now?
I think so, because I had no, excuse me, belief system. I didn't have anything that was dictating what I should experience, what's good or bad. I didn't have labels or categories to follow. Now, with that being said, I have nothing against church. I think church is a beautiful thing. I think all religions are a beautiful thing. I think they all have their really high, profound spiritual aspects that help you have union with God or whatever type of experience you're trying to move towards. And I think that there's also an ugly side to everything, to religion, to politics, to economics, to environmentalism. There's an ugly side to everything, to spirituality. But there's also there's a goodness in everything. And I think church is a beautiful place, and there's a lot of beautiful churches out there, and a lot of people have a lot of beautiful experiences and really grow. And that's, so I think it's a wonderful thing. And the thing about shamanism, it's not a religion, right? It's a methodology. So people from all faiths come and practice shamanism, because we're not telling you to believe anything. We're saying, hey, this is a practice that's been around for thousands of years. Anthropologically speaking, there's evidence that all cultures at some point have engaged in shamanic practices, and essentially that it's kind of an inherent kind of root for all humans. And through this, what we're trying to do is to show you methodologies to help you engage in these, millennia old practices, to help engage healing, to help you have spiritual experience, to help you move forward on your path. So essentially what we're trying to do.
That seems to be the hardest conversation. Like I have you and I've had this conversation before about being a closeted shamanic practitioner. I slowly become less and less closeted, but the hardest conversations I have with this is what you were just talking about, is methodology to a religion, to a structured experience. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that more, because I've been to a bunch of your that just slipped my mind, courses. That's the word that happened over a weekend. But when you teach your courses, the reason that I gravitate to them so hard is you're so careful not to say anything, and it's super irritating sometimes, because it'll be like you'll give a whole bunch of instructions that's something that needs to happen, and when you don't know what you're looking for, I suppose the typical methodology to teaching is the teacher gives you, this is the outcome you're sort of looking for, and you never do it, and you're open about saying, like, I'm not going to tell you anymore, just go, come back, and then we'll all discuss about what's happened. Is that a hard thing for you to express to people about shamanism as well, about explaining the difference between this isn't a religion, it's a methodology?
I don't know if it's hard. I think people are often relieved that they can engage in this. I mean, I've had people from all faiths do the workshops, and they're actually quite relieved that they don't have to give up their religion, or it doesn't offend their religion. They're just trying to go deeper with their own spiritual practice. And I don't like to be I'm not someone who knows it all. I'll be honest with you. I like to share what I know and to help others along the path, and essentially it's really about opening the door for experience and not putting any preconceived notions on someone, because that's what really is the killer of all spiritual experiences, is the idea of what something should be or how it should be. And really, spirituality transcends the mind. It's not your mind that's experiencing spiritual experience. You have to transcend your mind. What you experience is actually what is beyond what the mind can actually comprehend. So we do a pretty good job of trying to label it and describe it, but it never really does any good, right? And what's interesting, what I find with a lot of spiritualities, it can be very rational. They try to rationally understand something, rationally understand the nature of God or great spirit, but you can't. It's just beyond the mind's comprehension. It's outside of the mind. The mind can talk about it and debate it and do all these sorts of things and describe it. And if we both had an experience of union with God, we can use words to describe that. But if you're someone who hasn't, a rational explanation won't bring you any closer to it, and it's really important to not put any preconceived notions in anyone's mind, give them the instructions and see what happens. Because at the same time, this is always an evolving and growing. Spirituality is evolving and growing. What it looks like today, it'll probably look a lot different in 50 years and 100 years and 1,000 years as our consciousness grows. So I want to just leave the door open to see where we're headed and what kind of explorations and things people can discover and to express, and who knows what's on the horizon.
What's a really strange thing to describe, and what people just, I don't know, they don't believe it when I say it, and when I try and repeat it, they're like, "Come on," is like, so what you're saying, like when shamanically, when a methodology is expressed and it says, "Here, you can go and practice that. When you get back here, tell me what you've experienced." And so, say this has happened to me. This has happened to me every single course I've done, specifically with you. Other ones I've done as well, but it's so crazy to me every single time that when a methodology is expressed, every single person comes back to a group setting to discuss what's happened, and all of the experiences are not the exact same, but like rough, like all the wire lining is the exact same. They went to the same sort of place, they had the same sort of conversations. It's it again, it's just like I got shivers again. It's so strange to me that we get to live here. And I don't know if this is my religious experience from being a kid speaking, because every time I get to participate with something on the other side of this dimension and other people are sharing the same experience, it just blows my mind, because I grew up with that sort of preconceived notion that like we face this direction, we hope really hard, and maybe it will work out. Is that a do you run into questions from people's like people having a profound experience, and at the end of it, their mind getting the better of them, and they're like, "Nah, it didn't happen." Does that happen very often for you?
Well, I think so. I think we all doubt, right? And that's kind of we all doubt in terms of our experience. And you can have the most profound experience, but you're going to doubt it. And sometimes they're so profound, like you wonder, like, is that even possible? I experienced it. I know it's true. But when you're living your life again, you start to doubt, because life is so hard at times, you start to doubt, how can there be such beauty and bliss and oneness and freedom that exists when we're living our everyday life and we're struggling so mightily, and we're trying to pay the bills and raise kids, and our car breaks down, and it never ends, right? And you think, like, how can this be possible? These are such extreme opposites. But we live in the physical realm. In the physical realm, there's a spiritual undertone to it, but that's one of the biggest things. I'm going to probably go off on a tangent here, but
Go ahead.
people they try to, what's the word? They try to see the world as bad in a sense, or they seek spiritual experience and freedom to the exclusion of the world. And this is really dangerous, because we start to not to live our life. We start to think that our life is kind of doesn't have meaning, or it's a painful experience, and we seek to step off of it, to just to bliss out, to go to these higher planes. But there's a reason why we're here. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're all going to suffer. It's a part of the human experience. We're all going to experience great beauties and great joys, and I think it's through our wisdom we start to, find the middle path, in a sense. The Buddha talked about that, the middle way, right? And that comes through experience. That comes through being ground down. It comes through transcending our ego. And we can't neglect this life. Our ultimate liberation, our ultimate salvation really comes down through embracing this world. I mean, Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven on earth. Well, we need to embrace the earth. We need to embrace our lives. We need to embrace our neighbor. We need to live our life that's presented in front of us, and we can't escape it, and a lot of us do want to escape it. But if you do, you're avoiding your own spiritual growth. You're avoiding, your own development. And ultimately, we need to embrace our life. We need to, and this is where I believe the true salvation and the true liberation comes through, is when we fully embrace this reality, and then we can fully experience the immersion, or the eminent aspect of spirit in this reality, as the kind of non-dual experience. So just it's kind of food for thought, and to be grounded, and to celebrate our life, to live it, to use the hardships as a teaching, and to keep, trucking along, and try to enjoy every moment, and not let the lows get you too low, and not let the highs get you too high, and to just really enjoy it.
Well, I mean, isn't that like, for myself anyway, like that's been the biggest struggle of my whole life. I mean, I've been sober for 10 years now, but like when you say like don't let the highest highs get to you and don't let the lowest lows get to you. But like, that was my life until 10 years ago. It was like super high, super low. And it felt like
Yeah.
every single day was this ridiculous roller coaster. And that's the one thing I think that like I try and express to everyone in my life about what changed my life ultimately was, and I'm not sure if it started with meditation or meditation sort of got me to that place and then shamanism took over, but like it slowly knocks the edges off of both extremes that I used to have through nothing else other than my practice. Like I never consciously am trying to think as I get excited, like, oh, calm down. Or as if, something horrible happens to me or something shitty is going on. And I never intentionally think like, oh, you got to bring yourself back up out of this. But it's interesting that like this discipline and practice in my life has really, like, I mean, obviously I still have peaks and valleys, but like, holy moly, not what I used to. Did you ever have those, like, were you ever an extreme person? Like, did you ever have like really bad ups and downs and then you found your own path and it starts to get easier by your own practice?
Yeah. I'm probably more the middle path guy, inherently, yeah, I'm not a wide swinger, I don't get too down. I don't get too high, but I think that's a lot to do with just growing up in nature and just really appreciating the stillness of things. And, I mean, that was torture as a kid, obviously, but I mean, as an adult, for me, I really get power and just solitude by just silence, and not even silence, just stillness. So it could be stillness in the midst of chaos. That's fine. It could be stillness at a rock concert, or it could be stillness at a hockey game. Who knows it? But it's just being able to take it in and experience it. And I find that very, very empowering. But I mean, we all have different natures, and no one nature is better than another. It's just we got to kind of own up to our own nature. Mm-hmm. To say my nature is better than yours is not right. It's just we have different natures and they have different gifts and different curses. And I think what the big problem is when people throw their nature out the window and try to take on someone else's nature, I think we get into real trouble, right? Because we can't really grow and evolve. And I think we need to really embrace who we are. It doesn't mean we don't mature, and I think a lot of the wide swings, are often when we're younger. We have those more as you grow and you learn, you make choices, but you can't live someone else's life. You can't copy someone else. You can use them as guidance maybe, but it's really important to own who you are, with all your scars and wounds and ugliness. But we all have a beauty as well. And how do we, I can't transform you and you can't transform me. We got to transform ourselves by embracing who we are, embracing all the scars and wounds and traumas we went through. And we all have them. I mean, some people a lot worse than others, obviously, but we're all going to experience traumas and we're all going to experience great loss. So it's really important to accept who we are. And this is where our true power comes from, is when we acknowledge who we are, our ugliness, our beauty, and we step forward from that place. That's when we find hope. And that's when we really start to grow and evolve. That's when we own ourselves. And that's when we start to reach our true potential. I think that's really important, and most of us don't want to do that.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, that was what you're saying about like not adopting somebody else's personality or worldview when, like, especially when I really like personally, like when I started on my own spiritual path, like I was such an animal, and like I was an animal of a human being, and it was so hard for me because I was going to these yoga classes and I was meditating and I loved it, but like I didn't fit in with these people. And I really was like, I found myself adopting who some of the people were that I idolized. I found myself adopting and like trying to speak like them, trying to act like them. And it helped me in a lot of ways to I think sort of integrate into that world and sort of figure out where my place was. But oh my God, it was so hard, man. And I think that's the best thing that my shamanic practices afforded me is like, they're my experiences. It's my life. I am as God made me, and that helped me so much, because I find so much in spiritual practices anyway. It's usually, I think I always feel like I have a hard time fitting in because I live this weird, ridiculous life outside of what most people live in a spiritual existence, you know? And so it was really hard for me for a while. And yeah, it was adopting all this person's personality or this person's methodology or whatever. And it was like, I was just putting on these different costumes. And now that I don't wear one, my whole life has changed. Like my life literally has changed in the last 2 years of practicing like this, because I've really embraced who I am, and that's fine, and it'll be great. And do you run into that very often? Like people, like, and I wonder, because you said that first was, if we live other people's lives, we, our own life starts to get muddled. Do you find that you have to work with people within that, like to tell them you need to be yourself to fix yourself? Like you can't be living this different existence.
Yeah, and especially in one-on-one sessions, that's a common theme where people, you got to really let people know that you are who you are, and you must embrace that. And your true healing comes through accepting who you are, all of it, and regardless of what's happened to you. And until you accept who you are, you can't really grow. And it's really important. This is where the healing comes, and it's also important to get other supports as well. I mean, psychologists and all other types of supports that can help you. We're working with shamanic work. We're working on the spiritual aspect of the problem, so it's good to have other supports in place to help you on the mental and the physical, probably, and the emotional as well, to have a really integrated approach. And so, yeah, very common theme, that's for sure, and I think it's a real revelation for people, and often a weight off their shoulders, that, hey, I don't have to do anything. I just have to kind of start where I'm at. And we all kind of think we have to do all these things or totally change who we are. Well, the change will come, but that comes through hard work and growth and healing. But just by starting where you're at, and just, we're all broken at certain times, and we're all on top at certain times, and it's really important to realize that we're humans, and what I think that's also important is from my perspective is, I think we're all equal, in the sense that if I lived your life, I'd be in the same position as you. And if you lived in my life, no different, So it really creates a lot of compassion for me and non-judgment, because I think that maybe I've been very privileged to have certain experiences, and some people have maybe a very much harder life, and I'm not better than them because I'm in this position. It's just I didn't have to live their life. I maybe had different opportunities. And I think it's important. That doesn't make you worse or greater than someone else, and vice versa. It's just really understanding that, hey, I'm not if you're on the other side of the coin, I'm not weaker than that person. Maybe they're ahead of me. Maybe they went to university. Well, maybe you didn't have the opportunity. It doesn't make you unintelligent or weaker or anything like that. It just means that you may have to work harder, than the next person in line there, to really overcome some of the barriers or some of the things that weren't given to you. We're all human. We all have that seed within us of divinity, you could say, and that we're all precious, and we're all able to grow. And I really truly believe that.
It's what you just said. I sort of want to go back to it, because you said
Sure.
this to me last month, and honest to God, it's changed the way I talk to people. Because I had said to you, like, super irritated with something. I said something stupid, like I can't handle these people saying stupid things. Like, I can't handle it. I don't know how you handle it. And that's literally all you said back. And you said, I'll remember it like verbatim for the rest of my days. You said, if you lived the same life that they did, you'd be asking the same questions. And it was like getting hit in the head with a hammer, because I was like, oh yeah, of course I would. Like, those questions irritate me, because that was my walk. But that was such an important thing for me to hear, to come to a realization of, was that I never considered myself better than anybody. But when stupid things come out of people's mouth, I'm like, oh my God, come on. Which I know that other people have the same experience when I say stupid things too, but the way you said it was so appropriate to my meathead brain. I was just like, of course that would be, if I lived that life, that's exactly what would happen. Wade, why did you stop at shamanism? So like when you were introduced to it and you started practicing it, like you're obviously a guy who's well versed in a whole bunch of these different spiritual walks, or you've started investigating them. Like what stopped you on shamanism, and what got you to stay with shamanism?
And you mean back in the early days, like what kind of, well, I mean, first of all, I wasn't good at it. I sucked at it, to be honest with you. It didn't work for me very well, and I think that's what made me a good teacher, to be honest with you, is I struggled so mightily. I had to really work so hard at this. I get the person that's not getting it. Like, that was me. And I can see if I can actually break through, anyone can. And that's the literal truth, right? So, I mean, for me, it was just perseverance, just, seeing, because I have a psychology undergrad, as I mentioned, and just really valuing, development, right? And then also valuing spiritual development, and just seeing how much of a powerful vehicle shamanism is to heal and transform, and it's just sticking with it. And I mean, I love to learn, love to train, and I think that we all do. And I think when you find something that challenges you, it's this is where we get our greatest rewards. And I was fortunate to hook up with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and they're a very ethical group that's been around for many, many, many years. It really teaches authentic shamanism, and I was fortunate to be able to study with them. And it really, allowed me to engage a lot of initiatory experiences to help transform my consciousness, a lot of healing. And just what it comes down to is I experienced the power of this work and seeing people transform. And that's, for me, was the truth in it. Because again, until you experience it, it's just reading something in a book. But when you actually see it, and you see someone's life transformed, or you see someone after an hour and a half, they're a different person. That doesn't always happen, but when you see that, like a miracle happen, it's just beautiful. And it just makes you feel so lucky to do this work. But the right conditions have to be in place for this profound transformation to happen. People often come to someone that they want to be fixed or told what to do. And unfortunately, with spirituality, that's not how it works. We come here to empower you so you can make those changes, so you can make the right choices. Sometimes you make the wrong choices, but make the right choice the next time, learn from your mistakes. And it's really about empowerment. And this is why I stuck to this path, from this experience, seeing the transformation in myself and others, and just seeing the path of power. I think this is what really spirituality is about, is becoming empowered in our own personal spiritual power. When we do, this is when we can start to live a very balanced and harmonious life. It's when we lack our personal power, spiritual power, is when it becomes harder. We lack confidence, we lack the ability to accomplish things, but we all go through different phases. You could be all powerful 1 week or 1 year, and the next week it's a different story, and that's natural. That's growth and development. There's different stages we go through, and each stage has a different kind of sense of self and a different worldview, and we have to learn those each and every time as we kind of grow and evolve. And really, what I like about the notion of power is we live in a world of disempowerment. We disempower each other. We watch politics. There's so much disempowerment going on there. And it's really about, I find, when you start to empower others. I mean, I was a boss for many years, and I really believed that my job was to take my employees' stress away, to teach them everything I could teach, to lay the foundation for success for them, and to empower them. And that's what people want. They want someone to lead them in that way to reach their potential. And people tend to want to disempower, not to share knowledge, to show that you're better than someone else. But, the great leaders of our times have always been people that have empowered others to reach their potential. And that's what creates transformation on all levels. And so I guess, I'm going on here, but in terms of shamanism, just the path of power, and about continually focusing on things that empower you in terms of your mindset, in terms of attributional style, about how you handle when the shit hits the fan or when bad things happen,
Mm-hmm.
how do we allow that to empower us? So again,
Do you think that's I mean, that what you just said about like that haters hate mentality about people, the crabs in the bucket, people dragging people down. Do you think that's a part of the human condition, or do you think that's easily removable from people? It's just people never put themselves in a situation to remove that out of their life.
yeah, I think it's a combination. I think it's just a part of growth and evolution, right? As humans, we're always growing and evolving, and if you look at even our own lives, the different stages that we've grown through in terms of being a young child, being fully dependent on our parents, to to like elementary school, we start to develop an identity and going like, who am I? I didn't know who I am. I didn't know what I like, and then adolescence, where you really don't know who you are and you're probably copying everyone around you. And then as we continue to grow, now I lost my thought. Ask your question again.
It was about the human condition. Like,
Oh,
people are, as much as I think people choose to think that they don't do this, it's hard to find a person that doesn't hate on something that you're doing. Like, people just
for
do
sure.
it. And I always wonder to myself, because like I've never been a person to, I'm blessed in this way. I've never been a person to ever get jealous. Like, when something goes well for someone else, thank God this just happens to me naturally. But like, when I see someone do well, I'm like, right on. Like, where's mine? Like, that's great that you did that. I'd like that too. But it's always blown my mind when people have sort of that haters hate mentality. And I'm wondering if, like, from your perspective, from your shamanic, your professional, your academic perspective, do you think that's a part of the human condition, or do you think you can weed that out of people?
Yeah, I think it's part of the condition in terms of going back to the whole evolutionary aspect. So I remember when I was in grad school, I was bringing environmental policy together with kind of spirituality, and did a lot of research, studied a lot of different texts, and one thing that really inspired me was this whole notion of something called the radius of concern, which is really how far we can extend compassion and concern beyond ourselves. And it really correlates with our own growth and evolution, So when we're very young, we're not even really differentiated from our parents at a certain time, and we don't even really consider these ideas of concern for others, And as we grow, we start to become just me focused. It's all about me. I get what I need, what I want. I don't care about you. I'll step on you. I'll backstab you. I'll get what I need, But then, as we start to grow and evolve, we start to think, well, what about my neighbor? What about my family? We start to have a concern maybe for my sisters, my brothers, my family. We start to extend concern and love towards them, not just self-love for ourselves and being so selfish that we're only worried about our own needs and desires. And then we start to think, well, what about my neighbors? What about my community? And then what about the world? What kind of shape is the world in? And what about all sentient beings? Can I extend compassion to all sentient beings? What about all of existence? As we start to extend our concern and beyond ourselves to widening circles of compassion that extend further and further beyond us, these are actually, it's been shown, these are developmental growths or maturation. So at certain stages, we can't think beyond our own self needs. So that's very prevalent in kids, but there's a lot of adults that haven't ever outgrown that stage of development, and all they do is care about themselves, and all they do is accumulate things for themselves. So the most highly evolved people are the ones that have that compassion for all things. You look at Mother Teresa, maybe Gandhi, these type of people that have this unconditional devotion to all things. And now it's not fake. It's from deep growth and evolution of their consciousness, where they truly have that level of compassion that extends beyond themselves. Their radius of concern extends to the limits because they've transformed, they've grown, they're mature, and they've reached the real spiritual heights. So I think, as we evolve as a culture, there'll be less and less of this kind of me focused stuff, because, it's like, what do they call it? It's it's where the weight is. If most of the consciousness is here, you're going to either be pulled up or down to it, So if, and that's a good analogy that
the critical mass.
Yeah. So, if you can't go too high because the critical mass is pulling you down. You can't go too low because it'll pull you up. Right. But the critical mass, I believe, is always evolving too and growing. So I think we're at a more of a me first kind of a culture. I think it is growing and evolving. So I think that it's an inherent part of being a human. I think all of us go through it, And I think, maybe 1,000 years from now, it'll be less of a prominent thing as we grow culturally and the critical mass evolves.
I sure hope so. It gets to be a lot, especially what I do professionally. Like we see so many people step on each other to do stuff, and it's like it blows my mind every time we see it because my wife is my business partner, and every time we watch people act like this to one another, we're like, holy God, like what are you guys doing?
And it's hard. We got to take care of our families, it comes down to intention and motivation, and that's hard to differentiate at times. What is someone's motivation in their actions, and who knows? Only they know for sure. Sometimes we don't even know ourselves, so it's a tricky thing.
That's actually one thing that shamanism, again, like the thing that it's really taught me how to do is I've always been, again, very blessed that I understood what intention was and I understood how it was supposed to apply to my life. But my shamanic practice has honed my ability to understand my intention like perfectly. And if I leave this world with one gift that shamanism gave me, it was that, because like it's so, I find my life is so much easier. I find my professional life is easier. I find my life as a husband is easier. I find my life as a father is easier. I find my life as a human is just plain easier, because I ask myself all the time, like, what's your intention here, dummy? Like, especially when I'm losing my temper, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what is your intention here? And it's hard to describe to people, but like, I really think that has changed my life. Like, do you think like that, or are you past that now? Like, are you aware of your intention enough that you just sort of ignore it and you're like, well, my intention has to stay decent? Or do you have to constantly check yourself like old meathead Matt does?
I think it's important to keep things in your consciousness, right? To always be, if we lose sight of our goals, well, they're hard to reach then. And it's always kind of reminding yourself. But what I found as I getting older is that seeking mentality, and that gets in the way. And how do we kind of live and let live, and how do we just kind of experience life, but yet not be lazy with life, and try to, because I would be honest, a lot of my biggest spiritual experience came when I was just living life, you know what I mean? And little things just open me up to it. And then when you start to have a serious meditation practice with all these goals, like nothing happens, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of, but the practice is important though. With the meditation and yoga and all these things, the practice is really important because it trains you, But what I'm realizing now as I'm getting older is, and busy with life, as everyone is, being a father and all these things, that I don't struggle so much about having to accomplish certain things spiritually. I'm more trying to just live moment to moment and trying to really be a good person each moment. Now I screw up all the time, ask my kids and, I swear and I do all these bad things, and
but do you think that comes with being at an expert level at something? Like it's sort of, I think all of us have an expert level at something. Your expert level is at spirituality. Like, do you think a lot of where, like you just said, you try and live your life, it's like a professional athlete. Yeah, they're just living their life too, but they hit a ball a mile. They, you know what I mean? They can jump really high. Like, do you think that's a lot of what it is? Is it so you're a professional at it, so now it's entirely integrated into your life? Like, do you think that might be some of it too?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see myself as an expert. I'll be honest with you. I see I'm just learning along the way, and maybe I'm a few steps ahead on the path than some people, and some people are a few steps ahead of me, and we're all trying to teach each other, and I think that's the key. And so yeah, who knows, right? Like I think that I put a lot of hard work in. I mean, I've read hundreds and hundreds of books on spirituality over the years, and I mean that pays off, right? It gives you confidence, it gives you understanding, and in practice too. So I think when you put the hard work in, it does pay off, but you don't want to let things slide. So I'm in that place where, how much do I push and how much do I sit back and how much do I just kind of live life, and am I missing the boat here? And then we never really know. Some people, they take spirituality too seriously, to be honest, and that's their barrier. I have people who have told me I'm not reverent enough. And that's intentional, because I realize that you have to embrace all of reality, the good and the bad and the ugly and the fun and everything, to really embrace spirituality. But that's an important stage for certain people, to show reverence. If you experience some profound spiritual experiences, you're going to realize that it's all one, and it's all one. What's there to revere?
But if someone says to you, you're not, it irritates me to even hear that. If someone tells you, it goes to show you where I'm at in my life. If someone tells you you're not reverent enough with your practice, what do you say back to them? Because I feel like I'm in an argument and I feel like you're not. But if someone says to you like, Wade, you're not reverent enough with these practices, like, how do you navigate that person saying that to you?
Well, I understand where they're coming from, because I was like that at one time too. It's a stage, I think, where it's spirituality is something holy, and it's important at that stage for people to have that respect and devotion towards something. So I think it's important, so I don't want to like say what they're saying is bad or wrong, because it's important for them right now. And who knows, maybe I'll become very reverent one day too. You never know. But I do have a reverence, like I have an utter reverence. It's just, it's at my core, it's in my heart, and it's who I am. But I realize that it's all spirit, everything, and you have to embrace that.
Do you, this was just a thought I had as you were answering that. And I asked this because when you work with my wife shamanically as well, and do you ever get, what's the word? Do the miracles ever get normal to you? Like when somebody is profoundly moved, like you didn't, I think the first time you met my wife was via Skype during COVID, and like we're very like, we're both about sharpening the edge. We both have our own psychologists. We work constantly, and my wife's progression on her path, the next thing was like, I started working with you, and she said the same thing, like I need to start working with Wade. Her experience with you was so profound that it changed her life. Like her life won't ever be the same ever. It was like that stupid adage where like, if you change the direction your boat's going by 1 degree in 70 years, you're not going to be anywhere near where you end up. That was one of those life events for her. Are you surprised at those things happening now? Or are you sort of like, well, of course that's what happens. Like what else would be happening?
Well, yeah, for me, I'm not surprised. But I mean, everything happens in the work that I do. Some people experience nothing. I think maybe I'm a phony, right? You know what I mean? And it's really, and with shamanism, really, you're working with compassionate spirit helpers or spirit guides, is what you're working, beings of divine consciousness, and they're the ones really doing the work. I'm just kind of a vehicle. I'm just connecting. I'm just kind of supporting the work. So I don't really feel like it's me, like to take credit for. Mm-hmm. So I mean, when I sing about shamanism, it's really a really profound practice, in the sense you have to check your ego at the door. So all you meditators, this is right up your alley. The core aspect of it. So you can't get very far in this path if you don't check your ego at the door, because, and that's where my meditation came in handy with, to just really realize that, okay, I'm just a part of this process, and I can't really take credit for it. And really, whoever has a profound experience, I mean, they have that profound experience because they're ready for it. They've done the hard work. They've opened themselves up to it. We've created a level of trust with one another, and they've opened themselves up to it because they're ready to change. So if you're someone who's not ready to change, that you're not open to the experience, you can't force a miracle on someone. You know what I mean? You're just not. it's just not going to fall on you. You're not going to be able to absorb it. But for those people that are truly committed, so I mean, it's kind of like the perfect storm in a lot of senses. So I think what I've learned is how to maybe set the table, and to help people set the table or sit at the table through experience. It does, but if they're not ready, nothing happens, And I'll give you a total aside. I remember when I've always seeked deeper truths, my whole life, even when I was like young. I remember looking at the star-filled sky and always wondering, like, how can we live in an infinite world? Like, what does that even mean? And wanting to understand that. And I remember when I was in early 20s, probably, starting to really contemplate these things. What is existence? What is the meaning of life? What is the inherent nature of existence? And I remember my consciousness starting to ascend. I remember feeling it's finally going to happen. I can feel it. This knowledge is coming. It's here. And I felt like this force came down and just pushed me down. It's like, what? I wasn't ready. Like, I wasn't ready for that profound knowledge. And it's because something intervened in preventing me from, because it probably would have put me on the wrong path by having that depth of knowledge at too young of an age. I felt ready to, and I opened myself up to it because I was ascending to it in a sense spiritually. I think we all know what that means, but there's something that it's just like a hand pushing me down. No, you're not ready, son.
I've had not that, but like experiences that are similar to that, and like sort of what we talked about at the beginning of our conversation. Like, oh my God, when those things happen for me, I'm just like, no, take me now. Like, I'm just like, oh, I've been waiting for this. Help me more. Do you find it hard to live in this world as a shaman? Like, is it a hard thing to make a living doing? Like, you have kids, you have a family, you live, like you say, you live a real life. Is it hard to be a shaman?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really consider myself a shaman, and that's the funny thing. We've talked about this before. I consider myself as just Wade. I remember I was just a beer drinking, hockey playing, going to the bar kind of guy in university. You know what I mean? So like to have fun, and I'm just me, just trying to help people, right? And yeah, in terms of any types of spirituality, it's tough to make a living at. Let's be honest, it's just not mainstream, And I mentioned my psychology background. Well, 50 years ago, well, good luck being a psychologist, right? You can go see the quack, and who's going to go see a quack, right? But now it's common. It's got insurance that supports it, People, if you don't, we go to our psychologists. It's a very important development in our societies. The problem with spirituality, it's tough to regulate. You have people with maybe profound gifts, but not very deep level of maturity around ethics and about practice, ego issues, right? You can transgress that. You can take advantage of others, these sorts of things, positions of power. To do true spiritual work, it demands a lot from the individual and a real sense of authenticity and ethics. And so it's tough, right? And because if this is your path, it's tough because the supports aren't there, in terms of being able to really make a really decent living at it. Unfortunately, I mean, there are the few that do, to be honest with you, the people, accuse them of not really practicing spirituality. It's pop spirituality, right? So it's a funny thing. I think this will change and grow, maybe in 50 years, as everything evolves and grows, maybe 10 years, who knows? Things really speed up. When there's a need, the need will be filled, and we're at the infancy of professional spirituality, I guess you could say, but it's an important thing. In traditional cultures, tribal cultures, there's always a medicine man or a shaman. They had a role in society, and it was an important role. Well, that role isn't really a part of our society, and you can see the need for it. You can see the weaknesses we have without that type of healing being done on a large scale. So I think things will change. It is challenging. And I always tell all my students, don't sell the farm. Don't quit your day job. You know what I mean? You gotta get into this slowly, and you got to build things up over time. And it's and you got to do good work. If you don't do good work, well, good luck, right? And that's a real pressure, because you you don't want to have pressure when you're involved in this process. You want to be totally free and focused on what you're doing and not be distracted. So yeah.
That was a real, what you're talking about was a real eye opener for me. Like up until like 4 or 5 years ago, I had a hard time with paying someone for spiritual services. And the person that changed my mind was this shaman that I go to in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
He's 85 years old probably. And I was talking to him one night about him charging for his services. And so my wife and I are in marketing and sales. And if something's given away for free, it literally has no value. And it's hard to describe to people. Like if it's valueless across the board. Like it has to be of some kind of value to matter anywhere. Just that's a fundamental thing. That's it. It's a cornerstone. And he said the exact same thing to me. He said, spirituality has to have a price. It has to. He said, and he's like, this is not me. He's like, he's in the Amazon for sure. He said, we've been doing this for 100,000 years. And he said, you have to pay to get something done. You just do. And he said, it was in those cultures, it's always something of like ridiculous value. Like here's a cow, here's a goat, here's a crop, here's a this, here's a gun, here's a bow and a quiver full of arrows. Here's like, it's not if you could afford it. He said at the same time, if you couldn't and you bring me a flower, I'm going to do the same thing, but it's supposed to reflect what you are able to do. And that's been such an eye opener for me in the last bunch of years too, that spirituality is, as much of it is as a cornerstone. It's like a person like yourself. You've committed your life to learning the methodologies, learning how to do it. Like you have to make a living doing these things. But it was so interesting to me when this old man that never wears shoes, that's sitting on the floor of this dirt hut, says like there has to be value in it. If there's no value, it's valueless. And it was a very interesting lesson for me. And Michael Harner actually spoke about it in the Way of the Shaman. I remember reading that in the Way of the Shaman and being like, oh, this is exactly what Lucho said. That's so interesting. And it's, like you say, it's not an easy thing to make a living in like a spiritual walk, but like it has to have value. But it's funny that, I grew up in this society where I thought it was normal that you wouldn't have to pay for something like that. Are these conversations you have with people? Like, is there a lot of people that think like, well, if you're doing God's work, it should be free?
Yeah, and I think so. And I think, but traditionally in shamanic cultures, there's always a fair and equal exchange, and that was just implicit, right? I've read books where people would give a whole herd of horses to the shaman to do a healing. Imagine the value of a herd of horses today, or even then, even had greater value then. I think it's just finding what's a fair and equal exchange, and that's really the key, and it's a business. Unfortunately, you have to. I gave up my corporate career. If I wanted to, if I couldn't make money doing this, I'd have to go back and work 9 to 5 in the corporate world again, and I wouldn't be able to help people. So, the money doesn't, I don't have a money tree in the back of my yard, that's for sure, and I got to pay my mortgage like everyone else, and the bills, and in Calgary's an expensive city, and there's more expensive cities to live in. So it's really, and it's tough. That's something I always struggle with. Like, how do we charge for this? And it was I even had a hard time with it. At the end of the day, if you want to do this, you have to have a fair and equal exchange. Otherwise, you'll be working your 9 to 5 job and not helping anyone, And it's really about that. And like you mentioned, people, it's funny. Everyone wants something for free, but we really don't value it when it's free, which is kind of really ironic. Yeah, I like getting free stuff. Everyone does, but at the end of the day, it doesn't hold value when we have to work towards something. If I had to work, how many hours to come see someone and pay my hard-earned money, we value it. We value our time. Which reminds me of a funny story. I remember when I was doing some terrible job many, many years ago, and I worked to buy a ticket to Steve Earle concert in the Dukes many years ago. And he was just in a bitchy mood that night. You know what I mean? I love Steve Earle, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to say, fuck you, Steve.
Yeah.
$75, sing your ass off, you mother.
Yeah, man.
But that's, that's like,
Yep.
but he's having a tough day. But I'm thinking like, man, you know what I had to do to get here? And you're not
Hmm.
giving me a show, and I felt like I was being ripped off, I was pretty mad.
For sure. It's not my story. It's my mom's. When my mom was going to the University of Winnipeg, she went and saw Gordon Lightfoot.
Yeah.
And he was so lit up, he didn't finish any of his songs. She said he kept falling off his stool. And she said the same thing. She was like, I'm here to watch your concert. Like, what are you doing? He was concerned with getting lit up backstage and stumbling through his set, I guess. But that's so funny.
Yeah, it's important though, important topic, and I think that'll change. And I think what makes like psychology so accessible, it's covered through insurance. So we all have, if you have a benefit plan, you have so much per year you can use, and people use it, and so it's a great service. Something like this, will it ever be insured? I don't know. So that, same massage therapy, right? That's insured. So I'm sure massage wouldn't be where it's at now if it didn't have the coverage, because who doesn't want to have a massage? But if I have to spend whatever X dollars, well, can I afford it?
And I hear what you're saying, and I hear when people say that, but like that stuff doesn't even compute within my brain or my wife's brain, because we're people that are like. I remember my psychologist said to me, like, she said, if I can't remember how she worded it. She said, if your car's broken, you call a mechanic. If your plumbing's backed up, you call the plumber. But for some reason in our society, if your head is screwed up, you'll get drunk off your face and call your best friend who doesn't do anything to do with your head, right? So like I understand when people say like exactly what you're saying, like things are insured or it's this or it's that, but like these things are such necessities in my life and in people's lives that have practiced them and understand them, that like there's no, honest to God, there's no value that I can put to these things. Like it's the, like, of the superhighway of my life, like it's the dotted lines down the middle. That's how I know I'm not going into the next lane. Like I understand when I'm changing lanes. I understand how fast I'm going. Like, man, if I can, I beat this drum everywhere I go and I'm in people's faces about it, but like, if you can, not even if you can, you should be going to a shaman. I believe that once you understand sort of psychologically where you're at, like if you have a lot of problems, you need to get that sorted out. But once that's done, you just need to dive in head first into this world, because it's like, there's a reason people were doing these for hundreds of thousands of years before we showed up,
Absolutely. But at the same time, you can't force someone into something either. They have to be ready for it, or they got to want to do it. And I remember having someone show up just kind of checking me out. Like, it wasn't a very good session because they weren't really committed to change. They weren't committed to really being honest with what they're suffering from, And we couldn't go very deep, to be honest with you.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. Is the person who you're healing, or the person who's learning from you, is their intention important in that moment? Like, do you stress that to them, like to understand what their intention is for this session?
Yeah, that's kind of the core of what I do. So one of the real driving forces of shamanic work is intention. Intention is really what sets the outcome. Without intention, nothing really happens. Intention is like setting a goal. If we don't set goals, well, life just kind of happens to us. And in the work that I do, we spend time really focusing on what is your intention today. And it's surprising how often it changes. We think we know what we want to work on, and then it's really not that at all. Or people aren't honest with themselves, or they're shy, they think, hey, he's a shaman, he should be able to know what my problem is just by looking at me. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. But when you actually are open and honest in bringing your problem out and being honest with it, it's just it's there in front of both of us, and it really sets the table for deep healing when you can own up to it and to claim it and to share pain around it, and to really to be honest, show your vulnerability and say, this is tough, I'm struggling, and this is what I'm struggling from. I want healing, and I want to get better, and I want to live a better life. And this is why we come to see someone for help. We want to change, if you didn't, the people that don't come don't want to change probably, so the people that come usually do want to change and they want to do the work around it. And so that's, yeah, so intention's everything. And very often with intention, it's often very hard to put into words. We can sense it, we can feel it, and someone will come ready with their problem, but they can't express it. And that's all right too, as long as you're feeling it, and you can give me some kind of cues around what we're talking about. That's enough. But I want you to sit with that intention, to sit with that feeling of what needs to be healed. And very often it does go beyond words. And just you being with that it really opens a door for what we need to do.
Oh, it's wicked. We've been doing this for an hour and a half already, Wade.
Wow.
It goes fast, doesn't it?
That flies.
It does. Do you want to say something maybe sort of to wrap up this first one that we've done? Maybe where people can find you, how to get a hold of you, how to get a hold of
Yeah.
your
So,
services?
for sure. So calgaryshaman.com is the best place to check me out. So I offer healing services, one-on-one, sessions. Right now with COVID, it's all virtual. It's all or over the phone, which really it's been really interesting because I'm kind of old school. I like to be in a room with someone. I like to get to know them. But the COVID kind of opened up an opportunity where we really see the power of spirituality, that being across the screen has no difference in effectiveness as being sitting across each other with sitting in chairs. The power of the healing is equally as effective. And it just shows you that spirituality is really beyond space and time. It's beyond this ordinary reality, and working on the spiritual body, we're working on a spiritual level, which transcends all this. So us being a part, that makes no difference. I have clients all over the world, and it really makes no difference, if you're in Germany or England or New York or San Francisco, right?
That was the crazy, like, that was one of those mind-blowing moments for me, because the first virtual thing I did with you was a Sunday drum circle that you had. And I was like, going into it, I was like, oh, okay, like, we'll see what happens here. It's just gonna be a bunch of us on Skype banging a drum. And it was more profound than any drum circle I'd sat in my life. And I remember, like, which, I mean, such is spirit, right? It's gonna teach you all these lessons that you got to learn sooner or later. But I remember just being like, this is insane. And so I think I've done 3 or 4 courses with you, like over the internet during COVID. And it's insane that I personally like them better. I can understand why people like to sit in person, but like, I love it. I love doing it online because it's the same experience, but I'm just sitting in my house and I'm like, I love it. I think that COVID sucks, but some of these opportunities that it's afforded people, like, it's amazing. Like, who would have thought about doing
Yeah.
shamanic services over this thing,
Yeah. I agree. I was my clients that kind of pushed me into it. I didn't want to do it. And I'm glad it also just really shows the power of spirit, and it's really, really helped transform myself. And with the workshops, it'll be interesting to see when things open back up, what the difference is. And I'll continue to do it this way as well. But I'm looking forward to, doing a drum circle and feeling the vibrations of a whole room full of drums together and everyone singing and dancing and expressing their spirituality. It'd be wonderful. But it's just nice to be able to. We've created a real vibrant community, from all places that are can tune in, and we can connect, because it's hard to find people of like mind, of like interests, of kindred souls, and this makes the world a smaller place when we can connect this way. And yeah, so I mean, my website calgaryshaman.com is where to check me out. If you want to do healing work, that's kind of the best place to start. If you want to train, we offer, again, I work with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, so we offer from introductory courses to very advanced level courses and all sorts of shamanic healing. You can check out what's coming up. Hoping things will be back to normal in the fall. I have a whole fall schedule of in-person workshops tentatively scheduled, but if not, I'm offering online workshops. And I think I wasn't going to offer any this summer, because I think if Alberta opens up, we're all going to be celebrating. But I thought, maybe I'll throw in a summertime, introductory workshop that's online. So just check out my website on the workshop page there, and you'll see, when the next introductory online course is and when the next drum circle is. So if you're new to this, come to a drum circle. No experience is required. It's a great way to connect. And the nice thing about Zoom is we can fill up a very, very large room.
That's exactly right. And to any of you who haven't worked with Wade before, like if you have an opportunity to, if this at all interests you, you need to go and see Wade from a person who like is indentured in this lifestyle. My wife works with Wade. I work with Wade. I cannot say enough good things about who Wade is, how he operates, how he teaches, what he teaches, why he teaches it, the community that sort of swims in his slipstream behind him. I'm one of those fishies that's behind him, but yeah, it really is an amazing group of people. And to be honest, I made the joke to you, Wade, not long ago that like it's not that I don't care when it opens back up because I love sitting at home, but like I really want to meet with this group of people because I've never met any of them. I only know them online. Like they're not real people to me yet. They're still just people that I see online every couple of weekends. Everyone's there, and it's wonderful to see them. But I'm really looking forward to shaking some hands and getting to know people in person. But it was awesome, Wade. Is there anything else that you have to say sort of in closing from today's conversation?
No, I mean, just to say that like shamanism is an expression of what I do, but for me, it's bigger than that. It's just shamanism is one vehicle, but I think spirituality is bigger than any one vehicle. And I think that we can all come together and practice our spirituality together and to express it. And just makes the world a better place, to be honest with you. And I thank you. I'm really humbled. It's been a really beautiful experience to just chat and to do this thing. And it's kind of a new experience for me. It's definitely different, but fun. And I look forward to doing more.
Yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed that. So, as I said at the beginning, Wade and I we're gonna continue to have these conversations. We're gonna speak more. We sort of this converse for any of you that are further along the path who heard this that are irritated that we didn't get into anything big. This conversation is so expansive that it's going to go on and on and on and on and on to peel the layers back on this onion because it's just like it's hard to speak about the next topic without having ruthlessly covered the first couple. So it's going to take a while to peel all this thing back, but believe me, you will enjoy it. I do.
We'll dig a deep well.
We will.
Certain.
We will. So thank you, Wade. It was awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.